Welcome to episode 2 of Art Burn.
All right.
I started watching Only Murders in the Building last night. Have you ever seen this show?
No, I never even heard of it.
It's on Hulu. It's with Steve Martin and Martin Short and Selena Gomez. And the whole premise is there's a murder in their building. So they start a podcast because they're obsessed with like these whodunit crime podcasts. So I feel like I've watched 4 episodes of that. So now I know how the podcasting world works.
Yes, there are so many. You are just like opening a Pandora's box on like how many great crime podcasts there are. My favorite one is the one called Crime Town on this guy, Buddy Cianci. Have you ever heard of this guy who was the mayor of Providence, Rhode Island?
Oh.
Yo. Unbelievable listen and an unbelievable series.
He's the current mayor?
No, he was, but he was corrupt, but so lovable.
Yeah. As they are.
As they are.
Yeah.
So he kept like doing crazy shit. Like he beat the shit out of his wife's lover with a fireplace poker, and he went to jail, but they still reelected him. Just like,
Providence is like a real mob town, right?
Big time.
Allegedly.
Yeah, allegedly. And they really get into that and get into why and how. It's a really great one.
That mug is hilarious. It's also funny that then this guy can go and do a podcast and be like, and here's how corrupt I really was.
No. It was like a documentary on him.
Okay. I thought he was like the host or something.
No, your mug is amazing too.
Oh, yeah. I went to a taping of The View. It's always been my dream to have a talk show.
Yo, well, here we are. And I can't
know.
wait to start having guests.
Yeah.
Even next week. So let's just dive right back into it. I had so much fun with episode numero uno, sponsored by Pride Le Sec.
Yeah.
And
the dairy, the Wendell's Dairy?
Yes, thank you to them again. And we've got some great new sponsors this week. So
I love milk.
Yes, I know. It does a body good. Whatever happened to milk doing a body good? Now you can go into a coffee shop and they, an almond ain't got no titty.
And they found that oat milk is basically sugar water.
Exactly. Yes. Yeah. And soy. Or no, maybe it's not soy. Soy milk.
Soy gives you titties. Yeah. Oat milk is just sugar water. Almond milk, I think, is decent, but it actually takes so much water to produce almonds. Like, it's as much as cows. Like, that's a big problem. But we're not going there.
Yeah, oh my God. Don't get me started. Okay, so, ultimately, today I'd like to focus this episode on the artist's journey. So, we're going to explore with people in this art world about defining what the art world is, the artist's journey, the collector's journey, all those things. But I wanted to really hone in just today on the artist.
Yeah.
And so I've got some questions that I'm just going to kind of ask you and really just sit back and learn your perspective on these things.
And I read over some of the questions just so you know. This is going to be like my perspective primarily as an artist, like sort of because I think every artist probably wants, because your first question, I think every artist probably wants a myriad of things. Yeah.
All right, so let me ask the first question and then dive into it so our lovely listeners at home can understand where we're coming from. So basically, like what I was thinking about hacking away at my computer, toiling last night, what I was thinking about is, what do you think an artist's objective is and their aim to achieve? What are they aiming to achieve in the art world? Like, are they looking for fame? Are they looking for money? Are they looking to have influence? Something else?
Well, in the art world, I think if you're interested in what you're trying to achieve in the art world, then yeah, maybe you want to have like fame or influence. Money is like it's like the idea of money is present, but most artists, even when they're really successful, aren't rich, like I'll say this over and over and over again, like 99.9% of artists aren't rich. If they're able to live off their artwork, it's like a very sort of middle class existence in New York, which might be a couple $100,000 a year, but they're not like millionaire. If anything, they sort of if they're super hot, they might get invited to millionaires and billionaires parties and stuff like that. But so I think if you're interested in the art world, the way you phrase that question, then yeah, probably your interest is in some kind of success, whatever that looks like for you.
Sure.
Media, sellout shows, or whatever. And that has happened, that can happen, that will happen again. Right now, the market's in a really sort of dippy place. I think if you take out like what are artists interested in, period, and you remove the art world sort of context, I would say generally most artists are interested in creating art, right? So like if you removed a market and the pressures of success, whatever, I guarantee almost 100% of artists would say, I want to be in my studio all the time, every day, all day. I don't want to have a job. I want to be able to paint or sculpt.
Happens.
Yeah, exactly. So I think it's a little bit of a trick question because the art world is very much one thing and art making is a completely separate practice.
Your success as an artist kind of can allow you to be in that studio more and gives you the luxury of maybe being able to put your studio where you want it to be or somewhere that inspires you more or something along those lines.
Well, even, when COVID happened, I lost my job. So I went on, I was on welfare essentially, right? I got unemployment. I had health insurance. So during that 2-year period when I couldn't work, I wasn't making a ton of money. I was whatever it was, $600 a week plus, but it was like, oh my God, I'm a living artist for 2 years because all I got to do was kind of be in the studio. During that time, I wasn't rich. It was COVID money again. So I was bringing home like $700 a week or whatever it was. I was paying tax, all that stuff. But it was the first and only time in my life where I had 2 years of dedicated time every day, all day to be in my studio, to work. And I moved here. That's when I moved to Western Mass.
Wow.
So I made that choice because I had freedom. I had time. So I moved, to this space where I had all this, and I made a show that was very different than I would have been able to make in New York City in less sort of space. And in some ways, the financial freedom of COVID, given just what happened in the world, allowed me to sort of be a full-time artist for the first and only time in my life.
But is there a common thread that you see among artists that drives them all? Or is it always just art for the sake of creation?
Well, no, I mean,
For the sake of
you're
art.
talking to someone who's very specifically and has always been interested in fame. And I said, I want to be famous. I don't hide the fact. I think most artists want some level of attention, but fame is the art world is like an esoteric, very small sort of world. So
yeah, like Jeff Koons isn't recognized on the street. I almost got
right. Exactly. So
attacked.
It's a specific, it's a specific type of, I imagine, and I'm speaking just for myself, but I have lots of friends that are artists. Yeah, you all want a little bit. For me, the idea of fame is like you want attention from a distance and then you get to retreat to your private little cave and you get to hole up. And that's on the grand scale, it's like Michael Jackson in Neverland, right? He goes and holes up at this crazy compound, does whatever the fuck he wants, makes whatever, goes and entertains billions of people. That's kind of the mentality of the artist, I think, minus the molesting part, like that you want to make your product, and it's product. We're moving merch here if you're in the art world. And you want to take the success of that, whatever it is, to be able to retreat back into your inner life, because I think that's super important for an artist. And if artists don't have inner lives, internal experiences, they're shit. Like, because I think good artists are at least pulling from what's going on inside the world, around, and that's what I said earlier, that I think great artwork is a mirror of sort of society, of yourself, or, it's sort of holding up a mirror and saying like, this is kind of what's happening around us, and people can form their own opinions around it. That would be the ultimate goal for me. And that has been, I've had 3 solo shows in New York. I've sold maybe like 3 pieces total from both of them. Right. But my success was like, I made 3 shows that I wanted to. I sort of did this and walked away for 6 weeks and said, wow, I didn't think that would happen. So for me, that was like a huge success. And remains like the possibility of getting to exhibit and show my ideas that people can question. And I like that.
So, but ultimately, like that taste of success, wouldn't that push you to say, hey, these like XYZ works were selling better than these ZYX works. Maybe those are a little bit more market friendly and can propel me a little bit further maybe I'll kind of lean into that a little bit more. And to what extent do you consider that? And to what extent do you think artists should or do consider that? Like, tailoring their work for the greater market for the sake of their own art and propelling themselves so they can, to have the means to do more crazy shit.
I mean, so like I think I said this last time, like right now, figurative painting is really hot, and it's been for a while, right? So like I could go and make some figurative paintings that I think would be saleable enough, but it would be, first of all, I don't have anyone to show them. It would be so different from the work that I make. It's kind of like you own this company and you specialize in like used clothing, right? So it'd be really hard for you to pivot if all of a sudden you could probably make more money if you were selling Gucci and Versace, right? But that pivot to go from having your warehouse where you do one thing and you're doing it well and you know how to do that because you've been working towards this thing for X amount of time, to then go and pivot because of market trends is probably going to make your company fail. Like,
yeah, both. What's so
or you'd have to spend a bucket of money to make that transition. So I can probably
not just the money. I don't have the skill set or the knowledge and the know-how to be the guy Bernard Arnault, the guy that runs LVMH.
Right, exactly. Or everything that it took to get you, and he doesn't have what it took you to get there, right? The skill set, the knowledge, and same thing. Like, I'm sure I can paint a decent figurative painting and probably better than some stuff out there. But like the whole pivot, I mean, an artist is a brand for better or worse, right? And, it's not like but the people that have seen my shows, if all of a sudden I was like, oh, here's my figurative painting show, I think every person who knew my work would be like, oh, you're just a sucker trying to make a profit here. Like, it doesn't make sense. On the flip side of this, I work for a gallery doing some sales, and we've been talking in the gallery world, like, it seems like now, at least for designers and maybe advisors, that abstract work is sort of picking up in some way. So a colleague and I sort of joke like, hey, we'll just go and make some like abstract paintings, because it's abstraction. But actually that's like very hard, and it's like hard to make that pivot in any way. I always have this complaint, and it's a big complaint, and this was a trend for a while, where every painter was like going and making ceramics, and then in addition to their painting show, there would be some like really sloppy sort of shitty ceramics that they would throw in. And I just think that's like, it's like evolving your work as opposed to expanding it. So, and I think even if you're super successful in the market now, you won't be in 5 years. So I think just do what you do and do it well, and the success will sort of come in whatever way it does. Now, there's never going to be enough room in the market. There's just not enough collectors for all, 100 million plus artists in the world or whatever it is to be successful. There just won't be.
Wow. And do you think that there's like a quantifiable way to define what is good and what is bad in art? Because it's leading me to kind of the next segment of questions.
Well, I would say absolutely not. I would say it's all subjective. I mean, there's sort of standards though, right? There's like a framework when you think about like, what's formal qualities of painting. I'm just talking painting even, or sculpture, color, composition, that kind of stuff. So I've been looking at paintings as a layperson. I don't have a background in art history or art education or anything. But yeah, you can sort of look at a painting and say, well, they kind of knew what they were doing in terms of like putting this blob, even an abstract painting, right? I think, but again, that's my opinion, and what sort of registers, like, I think a sort of good artwork just registers as math. Like there's one solution and that's kind of it. But everyone can be a decent painter, and that's why I don't care. Like if you keep on working in the studio, you'll become a better painter. But ultimately, I think it has to be this kind of marriage of like maybe the quality of the paint, but also what's behind it. What's the meaning? Is there meaning behind it? And this is a big part. You'll hear this conversation more and more about abstraction, I think, is like everyone's just like started off as like men were done jerking off in the bedroom, so they started doing it on the canvas, like Pollock, It's like they kind of ran out of ideas, and then they said, no, wait, here's a new one. And
Mhm.
I've been with like big art historians that have said like, at the end of the day, when the aliens come and look at abstract work, there's going to be no idea what the fuck was going on because there's nothing in that. I mean, you might be able to, test the paint and see what decade it came from or something like that. But other than that, there's no representational image of any idea of what the artist was having in mind or so. But it's sort of a roundabout way. But no, I don't. I think that all art is incredibly subjective. I think and no one's painting like the old masters anymore. I mean, people could maybe ape that kind of style if they wanted to, but for a while it was like, okay, quality, it has to be representational, it has to look exactly like this kind of thing. And that was how we sort of defined quality, is that you could represent like a figure or a place, that it almost had to be like this photorealist. And you'd be like, oh, that's a good painter. But I don't think, again, I think, go ahead.
So basically, then how would you define what makes an artist an insider or an outsider artist? Like if
outsider art is actually like a true thing, starting with Art Brut in like Paris, like France, that started. So outsider art is actually a real thing. And it started off being like, you had to be not formally trained and generally mentally ill. And so this was, and there's outsider art fair. There's galleries that are specific to, there's an outsider art fair that I've done in Paris. There's one in New York, and there are galleries that focus specifically on outsider art. There's a lot of it from the South. A lot of it involves people of color. Generally, there's like underrepresented people. And so these are people that were just essentially making art in their home with whatever materials that they found.
So it's like a craft more than like trying to participate in this art world of galleries and things like that.
Yeah, all artists are craftspeople, I think, but yes, these are, and I think oftentimes because it was coupled with mental illness or with such a remote, like these people weren't even aware of an art market or an art world. And I've actually worked with a number of these like outsider artists because I've done the fair a few times. And then sort of insider, I think you mean like people that are just like hip and kind of like in the scene.
People who are part of this art world. Yeah, exactly. And like, are there like certain ways to navigate for an outsider to become an insider? Like, and also like
money.
Someone in, please elaborate on that.
Well, if you are like an outsider, I'll use you, right? Like you're an outsider outside of the formal art world, right? Well, the more money you have to go to galleries and shake the hand of a collector and buy a piece here and buy a piece there, that really gets you access much more quickly. For an artist, I mean, it's similar, not necessarily money, but I think it's playing that game and showing
proximity.
Up. I mean, I've done this. Say that again?
Proximity. So like it's harder for someone in Ohio to be, part of this be in these galleries, because maybe the galleries are where the money is, and the galleries are in New York and LA, and so ultimately, like,
well, often I'll correct you. The galleries are often not where the money is. Galleries generally have no money. They're really like mom and pop shops, and like everything sold matters.
Artburn is brought to you by Vaseline. When the art world gets a little too rough around the edges. Whether you're a painter suffering from chapped hands, a sculptor dealing with dried out skin, or an art critic who just needs a little more slip in their step, Vaseline has you covered. It's not just petroleum jelly. It's the smooth salvation your creative process has been missing. So go ahead, let your art burn bright. Vaseline will be there to smooth things over. Vaseline, because art burns, but you don't have to.
The job of the gallery and the dealer is to make sure that they are playing the game with all the collectors as well as the artists, because no one wants to work with a gallery when you're like, fuck, I can't pay my rent this month. And I promise you, many galleries every month cannot pay their rent or an art fair application.
Yeah.
The perception, and there was a great critic for the New Yorker who, Andrea, I'm forgetting her last name, but I had this conversation once with her where she went to an art fair. She was talking to the dealer, and the dealer's like, oh yeah, everything's sold. Everything in the booth is sold. And then she went to a group show like a month later and she saw some of the work that was in the booth. And I said, well, what do you think about that? And she said, well, that's the job of the dealer, right? Like the job of the dealer is to kind of instill this confidence in everyone around them, the collector, the critic, the artist, that everything is doing great. Because as soon as, I mean, if collectors were privy to all this sort of backroom conversations with dealers all the time about how tight things are, I mean, it would shake a market, I think, in some way, right? Like it wouldn't instill confidence in anyone.
Yeah. Well, I guess that's just the nature of business in any sort of way.
Well, but you can also open your books, like any business. Like if you were to sell your business tomorrow, right? Like a potential buyer would come in and say, well, let me see your books from last year, see how you did, right? Because I'm going to take over your storefront and your manufacturing or whatever. You could do that potentially at a gallery, but like we said the first episode, there's no way to go from year to year, even with the same artist, and say, well, I did $100,000 last year with, Topper Luciani, and this year we can't move anything. I mean, that may be generally how it is.
Poison.
Yeah. Well, you have to build a market because everybody needs a t-shirt, right? Everybody needs socks, or everybody needs a car generally to get around, or everybody has to have a television. But part of the thing of this is we have to kind of figure out like how to incentivize people to let them know that everybody kind of does need artwork, not just for the value of it, which can be really sort of beneficial, but I think for what's behind it, the ideas as a sort of philanthropic model to support young artists and even young galleries. It's a funny thing that I think when you go into galleries, you do, and I've done this when I had galleries, like I'm in the best suit I can afford. I look the part very much. Like I look.
You gotta buy one from Good Fair, baby.
Yeah.
Use one.
Just send me one.
I will.
I was gonna wear my Good Fair sweatshirt today.
But Gennady is so fire.
Well, but yeah, I mean, you play the part. It's like artists too. It's like you fake it till you make it. A lot of successful artists, I think, walk around kind of, you have to being like, I'm good, I'm talented, I can do it. It's nerve wracking to even, I mean, my first show I did, the amount of, what's that called? Like, imposter syndrome I had going into that first show of just being like, oh my God, I'm a loser. This is terrible work. Like, was really intense for me. And I had been someone that had a gallery and I had seen it. And by the time, but also like in retrospect, the show wasn't great. Right. And then the second show got better and the third show. So for me, the part about being an artist, and this is what I think we're lacking more and more, is like, if you're lucky enough, you get to put things on display publicly and you get feedback either from your peers. It's the same thing about studio visits. I mean, I think this is one of the real benefits of graduate school, is that at least you get peer review and people in your studio. I think once you're out of that space and you're just, as an artist, you're kind of an island. And I think why I want to show more than anything is because I have ideas that I think are robust. And I think this is how I choose to put them in the world. As opposed to, I also write novels, right? I act, I do all this stuff, but my art practice is very specific to specific ideas that I and I want to use material objects to sort of show that. So I think painters are probably, I have a good friend, he's a great painter, Ian Felice. He's also a singer, songwriter. Felice Brothers are like a great band. And when you talk to him in person, he's like basically silent. Like I've had dinner with him. He doesn't say anything, but he's so expressive in his painting and in his singing, that I think, I don't know. I think every artist is very different, but I think ultimately the artist just wants to find ways to express themselves in some kind of public venue. Otherwise, right, we wouldn't try to show or make a movie or go on tour or publish a book. You would just be happy in your studio making work.
And I'm sure there are people like that will croak and then will find their work and it'll be on fleek. But what do you think it takes to like get an artist's value to go from like $5,000 a work to 10 grand to 50 to 100 to 1,000,000, what are those things? What are those elements? And can we dissect that? And how do we kind of tell the artists who are listening right now, like guide them on how to do that?
Well, so
or who do we talk to help them, because I want every artist that I know, if they're selling for 5Gs, fuck it, let's fucking bump it to 50, bump it to 100,
So I would say then so first of all, I think the first job of probably us gallerists, anybody, is to manage expectations around all of this. Like, really, even for the collector, because if you're promising collectors that $5,000 work will be $50,000 in the near future, like, you're going to have a lot of this stuff. But so how you do it is you get more people like you, seriously, who have $5,000 that have a vested interest in growing this artist career to keep on buying that work. That's how you do it. That's the only way you're ever going to. So again, I'll use you.
This
You're
can
in
be
Houston.
gamified. Okay, yeah. Because this is what I want to. I want to fucking gamify this shit.
What do you mean gamify it?
I want strategically create an approach with artists, with collectors, to ordain a handful of artists who are talented, but control or have influence on their ability for their value to go up, but be on the inside, or be early on their,
and you should open a gallery. That's what galleries
not that
do.
Good.
Well, I think how it's done, what you're talking about is gallery representation, right? You take a handful of artists that you believe in and you foster their career over years. That ideally is the job of the gallery, except the market pressure is so heavy and the costs of running a gallery are so robust that you actually have another friend. She's a great dealer. Her name is Kristen Lorello. She has an amazing space in New York. She's had it now for maybe a decade. Small spaces. She keeps her costs so low. And she's told me, she said, RJ, it really sucks sometimes because I don't get to do my job. But she said, my job is to talk about the meaning behind the artwork, not the value of it. And right now, that's all gallerists are doing, I think. And so this thing that I think
all they're doing is talking about the meaning or talking about the value.
The value. No one really gets because people are like measuring and matching colors to make sure it fits behind their couch because that's how we're selling shit now. So
right.
To talk about the meaning behind things
and why is the meaning important? I mean, I know why I believe the meaning is important, but why do you and why does the art world? Why should we be thinking about that?
Well, because otherwise then we're just moving merch. Why not go to IKEA and just buy a print? Like if you're not interested in the specific meaning and context of an artwork, why are you paying $10,000, $5,000, $8,000, $22,000 for anything? Let me shit on a newspaper and frame it for you and you call it what you want.
That's the nugget of beauty of how we expand our audience and broaden the pie of art, because ultimately that right there is what we need to focus on and package better for our collecting outsiders. Meaning, leaning into the meaning as the hook.
I also think people collect for decoration, right? Most of us, even if you like the meaning, you're still looking for a space. I'll show you. Look, I have a couple paintings on my baby. Look, I have paintings on my bookshelf, right? I bought that pencil one because I'm a writer, so that's why I bought the pencil one. The sculpture of the book and vodka because I like that author. So I knew the meanings behind things, but then I sort of decorate my space with it, right? And no one when they come is asking the meaning, but it has value to me of when I decide to spend whatever money I can buy on art. But again, I think if you and a lot of people, even great collectors, buy to fill a space. Cool. I'm for, I don't think we have to keep our nose up in the air and say, no, you must buy for, curatorial, blah, 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 blah.
Right.
But I do think to sort of value and honor the artist in some way, like knowing the meaning of the work or the interest or where the artist is sort of coming from, makes a lot of sense for me personally. And also, I think I want to own something that I can look at and continue to sort of get meaning from, because you're mostly buying still flat images, right? So like, actually, there's a painting back there that my friend Eben Benson did of,
That's dope.
it's like a tractor in a field,
Yeah,
right?
John
But I know
Deere,
I
yeah.
live out here. I know the story has something to do with his dad that died. I'm friends with him. So it has this kind of like emotional resonance, and there's a connection between him and me. He's a friend. You know, so there's all this kind of stuff that goes into the, and I also bought that painting for $600, and I had to make 2 payments of $300 each. So I'll tell you, there's lots of ways to collect with little money. So I did. And so that's a good, also like that painting, the pencil painting, I think was like, I don't know, maybe $1,000 that I bought in 2 payments too. So there's lots of ways to collect where you don't, and the value of that pencil painting, for instance, it's probably tripled by now. Cause that artist just, so, well, why I said also, you know, you should have a gallery, because that piece increased because I bought it probably 3 years ago. That artist has had a few more shows. So generally every show you might raise your prices a little bit. You know, you never want to go from $5,000 to $50,000 in the course of a year or something, because that's going to kill the market. And I think the goal of an artist, at least for me, get the work out there at any cost in the beginning, right? Like, you're just losing money as an artist most of your career anyway, truly. But like, the more work that is in the world of yours, you know, someone's going to go over to someone's house and say, oh, I like that. Or I've sat down, people who haven't collected my work because it's hard to collect, but I've sat down at dinners and people say, oh, I saw that Michael Jackson show. You did that? Cool. Like, that's the kind of, for me, that's like, I'm happy with that, really. Like, I really, you know, I grew up like poor white trash in upstate New York, never went to a museum, didn't really understand art or know anything about it. So the idea that at some point, some gallery in New York City is going to let me show my like crazy trash art, I'm like, I won. Like, that to me is, I feel like, I hope that's the sort of takeaway for most artists, just because I do think markets dip, popularity dips, trends go in and out. You know,
so an artist having multiple shows in the right places or with the right galleries theoretically can drive value also.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, absolutely. Like, I think generally, like, there are lots of artists that sell out of studio and stuff like that, but a gallery can be really helpful. A gallery acts as sort of a business manager in some way. Like, if you're an actor or musician,
a Scooter Braun, if you will.
Well, less gross, but yes. But sometimes they're also really gross. I mean, you hear all the time, like, and also, but I'll take out the gross part. It's just money is tight constantly. No one I think the impression really is that gallerists are rich because you have to kind of look the part and do all this thing, and you're around the world at art fairs and stuff.
With rich people, yeah.
With rich people all the time. You have to take rich people out to dinner. Like, you know, and you're putting this on your Instagram to show that you're doing it. And I know from personal experience, and I was $40,000 in personal debt from owning 2 galleries on top of like whatever business debt I had. This is what I'd say is some of the benefit of having rich people own galleries. Like, I say more rich people should own galleries so that they can show things that aren't just paintings. And because there are other ways to increase like an artist's worth that aren't necessarily through sales. Like, lots of institutional artists that show in museums, they're not going to make a ton of money. Museums aren't buying shit. A lot of museums don't even collect. And generally, galleries have to pay if one of their artists go to museums.
So is a museum choosing what work it displays or purchases based on their benefactors? And their benefactors are also the collectors. This is just a guess. But basically, like, if I was writing checks to museums, I'd want to be donating my art as a tax write-off, and I'd want to be choosing who these artists, you know, what museums like bless as like this golden museum worthy artist. And by golly, it's going to be the fucking artist that I said.
Right. I mean, so that would that's sort of like insider trading though, right? But
isn't art the ultimate ability for insider trading?
Yeah, absolutely. Although it's not like, because it's such an unregulated, there's no guarantee. I mean, you might make like money quickly, but I think long term we haven't seen that unless, you know, you're flipping Warhols or something. So museums generally,
we're going to create the next Warhol.
Well, we'll talk about that. So museums, I think if they collect, they generally have acquisition boards or committees, and as far as I'm sure board
It's a
members.
cabal. It's all the homies.
Well, sometimes it's
Like, we're selling what was the drug that like killed everybody?
Oh yeah,
Not Vicodin.
Fentanyl.
Oh, fentanyl, but no, the other one that
Oxy.
Oxy. We're selling Oxy. We're buying.
No, but those are so. I mean, I don't know how that worked, but right, the Sacklers, like the Temple of Dender, that whole wing at Met, for instance. I don't know if they took the sign down or not, but like, doesn't matter. They got the Sackler money to finance that wing. I mean, I always say this: the way the museum system is set up in this country, in America, like, if you want exhibitions, like, no one who can afford to write $1 million check is a social worker, right? They're arms dealers, they're drugs dealers, they're no one with that much money has that much money from like being a school teacher. That's just versus like the Kunsthalle system in Europe, that's government funded, et cetera, et cetera. I would hope that the board members stay out of the acquisition committee as much as possible, but I'm sure not.
Oh, so it's separated.
It technically, and so like I know, like at the MoMA, we should have a fact checker come on, like in what was that Dax? The Dax Shepard podcast where Michelle would like fact check everything. I think most of this, but like MoMA has different acquisition committees for like works on paper, sculpture, painting, and they're all different members and they have a budget. And some of it I know this, like, sometimes people have a discretionary budget, different curators, for instance, of like $10,000 a year where they can go to art fairs and buy a few pieces or something like that. And sometimes things over a certain budget have to be vetted. And so I think every museum that collects, and many museums don't collect, have different processes of...
Museums don't collect?
Yeah, many don't collect.
Oh, wait, explain that to me. Sorry.
So, like the new museum in New York on the Bowery, right? That's it's a non-collecting institution.
No.
So they have no permanent collection. So what they do is mount exhibitions, and in that circumstance, a lot of times galleries have to pay or raise funds to help with that. The museum, of course, kicks in a lot of money. Yeah. And this is not New Museum specific. I don't work for them.
Just hypothetically.
But in general, the galleries have to probably raise some money or give some money for their artist show at a museum. A lot of times collectors are asked. Even for collecting institutions, I mean, the curator has to raise money to get stuff shipped to, like, I know the curator who did the big Warhol show, at Whitney. And a lot of that was fundraising to pay for shipping and insurance, because a lot of that stuff was privately owned. And, the Last Supper painting was massive. I don't know how big it was, but like, so the insurance value.
Not cheap to ship.
Not cheap to ship, and it has to travel. And it's not like you can unroll a Last Supper painting from 1960 something. That has to be shipped. So there's, then museum, the chiefs of museums make hundreds of thousands of dollars, and all the sort of anybody below them makes dirt. Like, there's a whole top-down kind of system, but that's just the art world.
Yeah, it's the way it goes. That's the way the cookie crumbles.
So, right. I mean, it's like capitalistic model based on the model of America.
Uh-huh. Well, based on the model of what works and what doesn't, baby. So, what?
It works for the very few.
Oh, yeah. Oh, it probably needs an adjustment or two of capitalism. But.
Well, I used the example of like the Marvel movie last time. Like, a Marvel movie production budget is $200-300 million, right? And you sort of end up with a very mediocre crowd pleaser, right?
Yeah, I've been thinking about since you said that.
Wild. If you took that $300 million and gave it to 20...
The Weinsteins.
Well, 20 artists, though. Like, imagine you would have 20 quality films. They probably wouldn't be crowd pleasers. They're going to be difficult. They're going to be controversial. There's going to be full frontal nudity. You won't want to eat popcorn, right?
Porky's.
But you're going to have 20...
Remember that movie?
Which one?
Porky's from the 80s. It might have been before your time.
Well, I know of it, yeah. But, I think it's the same thing. Like, yeah, if you diversify all the money that does exist in the art world, and how do you do this? Do artists get a universal basic income? In New York City, my argument would be absolutely, because...
You're crazy.
No, let me tell you why I'm not crazy. You, as a layperson, can walk into hundreds of galleries in New York City for free. An artist makes nothing from that.
Right.
So you get to look at museum quality exhibitions for free, and every institution you walk into, and artists have to pay exorbitant amounts to live in a city that doesn't support them, that they have to have day jobs. You have to have a studio space. You have to buy supplies. So actually, the cultural impact of having like a New York City, you keep on saying this, New York City is the art world, right?
Yeah, yeah.
But artists don't make any money from making it the
why
hub
do
of
they?
the art.
So, but help me understand and help our listeners understand why artists need to be there. Why can't they be in Massachusetts or out in fucking Houston or out in somewhere that's cheaper? You know, I got 125,000 square feet for what it would cost me to be in, you know, a studio in Manhattan.
Yeah. Because there's no quote unquote tastemakers there are a handful in every city, right? Like, I actually know really good galleries in Houston and good artists in Houston, and the Menil is there. But
without shitting on it, I mean, I know we're not trying to shit on it. I just want to really to help define the importance of being in these really expensive places for emerging artists.
It's just where you get the most eyes on anything, because that's
wouldn't you argue that
concentration.
You get the most eyes on social media? Like, you get way more eyes on YouTube and TikTok and Insta and Twitter and all these things.
Sure, but if there's a great artist from Instagram that's in like Wisconsin, I'm not going to fly there as a gallery. You know how much that costs, and then to ship stuff from. And
we're getting somewhere here. Yeah, I understand.
Today's episode of Art Burn is brought to you by the Rotary Club of Des Moines. For over 100 years, the Rotary Club has been dedicated to service above self, enriching the community and making Des Moines a place where art and culture thrive. They're really passionate about bringing people together, which is why they host events like Art and Chili Night. It's an opportunity for local artists to showcase their work and for everyone to enjoy some delicious chili with friends and neighbors. Whether you're an artist or someone who just loves to support local events, Art and Chili Night is the perfect way to connect with the community. If you're looking to get involved, the Rotary Club of Des Moines would love to have you join them. It's all about service, fellowship, and making their community a better place, one bowl of chili at a time. So check them out and see how you can be a part of something meaningful. And here's the best part. If you swing by Art and Chili Night on a Wednesday before 5 p.m., you'll get half off of your first bowl of chili. That's right, half off. Just mention Art Burn at the door, and they'll know you're there for the art, the chili, and the savings. So grab your art-loving friends, head over, and enjoy a midweek deal that's too good to pass up. I can't stress this enough, that galleries, 99.999% of them are mom and pop shops who are like balancing the books and saying like, can I afford extra trash bags this week? Like, it's not an exaggeration. Of course. These galleries are down to the wire, and not, and you may have $40,000 in the bank account, which is more than most people in this country, right? But if you have a payroll and rents, well, that's gone in 1 month or half a month. That might not even cover,
it's nothing.
Yeah, it's nothing in New York. And that's just a gallery. Like, we have two spaces in New York, one in LA, three employees. Health insurance costs, like, I guarantee that probably, I have no idea, actually, $60,000 a month between payroll and rents and insurance. So that means just to cover the cost for this tiny, small mom and pop, 3 employees, 50 or 60 grand. That means we have to sell between $100,000 and $120,000 a month because we only get 50% to cover costs. Our average painting price is probably 7 or 8 grand, 10 grand. That's a lot of shit we have to sell.
Yeah. So you're saying, but tying that back to why the artist needs to be close to that. So they need to be in that world, and also to be close to collectors, or to be close to
because collectors
close to the inspiration of
collectors can be anywhere in the world, and they are. Of course, they're concentrated in the coast and New York. There's so many collectors in Houston, though, and Dallas, and because they fly. They also, the collectors from, now there's an art fair coming up in Houston that we're doing.
You're coming here?
Yeah, for Untitled. They're doing that. I don't know when it is, but it's in the spring, I think.
Are you doing a tour of Good Fair? Are you coming to the warehouse?
We're doing a tour. I'm going to be the paid spokesperson. I'm going to try on all the clothes.
Baby.
Yeah, me and French Fry, man, we're coming.
Rock and roll.
Yeah, I don't know when it is. I think it's in the spring. I have to find out. But
that's so dope. I'm stoked.
So it's like going to an art fair, actually. Like, if you fly to Miami in December and go to Basel, like, despite everything, you're going to see a few hundred galleries in 3. And so that's kind of easier for a dealer or collector or anybody than going to Wisconsin and Ohio and, trying to spot all that stuff there. And for an artist, I'm not saying that it can't happen, and it does happen. We work with artists from kind of all over the world, truly. But at some point there was we saw them in a show in New York, or they came from like a college in New York, or, around there. Like, I know we go to Columbia grad shows, Hunter, Yale.
To what extent do you think it's important to like be within the among like-minded individuals? To give you an example, like when I met you at that Dallas Art Fair, went later on to a soiree at a hotel with other people that were from that show. And I was like, yo, these are my freaking people. They were so eccentric. Everyone was fucking rich. And like a vibe, And it felt like, hey, maybe I want to be on the coast so I could experience this a little bit more often. And I'm sure that's going on with artists. And remember, like back in the Impressionist days, like all the artists were sipping absinthe and hanging at the same cafes and, painting the same shit. Like, is that going on also? So, kind of, I know it's 2 questions, but.
Ish. I mean, sure. At art fairs, it's like a big, celebratory thing. Yeah. So there's always, we do dinners generally for our shows, and, there are collectors there, and it's, booze can sort of flow freely. I think COVID honestly changed a ton of that, though, in some way, because
why are all people in the art world so left-leaning, like that everyone was so obsessed with COVID?
Well, no, it has nothing to do with left or right. It has to do that no galleries were physically open for 2 years. So people were just buying off JPEGs. And then I think the galleries decided, like, whoa, market is booming anyway. We don't need to spend money on drinks at openings or fancy parties because people will just buy regardless. See, this is your paranoid right brain speaking, that anytime anything mentions anything that you possibly consider left-leaning.
Get my tinfoil hat. I got
one.
one.
Exactly. I'm like, no, the fact of COVID, whether you thought it was real or not, just the world shut down for 2 years.
True.
That's true. And, I think rich people could not spend money on anything other than art. Manufacturing wasn't happening. Houses weren't being built. You could not travel. If you talk to any dealer for the rest of history, they'll say, bring back COVID. Bring back COVID, because the rich were landlocked.
Wow.
You couldn't do anything except artists were in their studio pumping out work because no one was working. The world shut down.
And our e-commerce business was really...
So let me tell you, here's my real left-leaning self.
Give it to me.
Socialism would make art boom for everyone in this country because artists would be making a livable wage. People would be making a livable wage, and they'd be able to afford it. And there actually wouldn't be billionaires in the same way. Everyone would be making $250,000, and artwork couldn't be $1 million because no one could afford that.
But there would be nothing to separate me as a terrible artist from you as a good artist.
Well, of course there would be. There still would be critics, and there still would be galleries and curators and museums, and there would be, yeah, absolutely. Just because it can be sold doesn't mean anybody would buy it. And just because there would be more money.
But I would be gamifying it way harder than you would. So your art would be being better, but I'd be out in the fucking streets fucking hustling this shit like a crazy person. And have a TikTok account. And with, I would be doing TikTok dances about my painting. And, millions of people would be seeing them and buying them, where, like, an actual good artist would be hidden. And that might be happening now.
Well, that's the other thing. I don't know how, because the art world is so, just to your point, we're like all over the place.
Yeah.
But I would like to stick with my socialism argument for a minute. But
Okay.
it is funny. I don't know that the art world would accept like a goofy, even if you were, it's funny if you had like some artist who was like goofy dancing around their paintings.
Mhm.
Because now I keep on thinking about this because you brought up this question before we started this, like, do artists have to be hot? And I was
I'm getting there with that
I was
question.
like, stupid question. But then again, you look at the Instagram and everyone is sexy, male, female, their legs are open. I mean, it's very inviting, right?
Mhm.
And I was talking to another dealer friend and she was like, sort of, it certainly doesn't hurt.
Yeah.
And I do also know that if artists don't have Instagrams, I've heard this from dealers, because some artists just want to make their work. It's a collectors and everybody. I mean, that is a good thing about social media. One of the good things is that has helped to democratize at least the appearance of art. Like, I know a lot of artists that have 30, 40, 50,000 followers.
Wow.
None of those followers are buying artwork because they can't afford it.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
So they're not the right followers.
No, no. Those are great followers. Like, you know, who
they're not
like,
buying. They're not the right fucking people.
Well, but if you only have one buyer, your career is going to go away. And any one of these 40,000 followers can and should be developed into a collector. You know, we don't know what sort of money.
I've bought works off of Instagram, but like, do collectors or gallerists poo-poo? Not collectors. Do artists or gallerists poo-poo? Selling the work on Instagram, like putting their work on.
If you represent an artist, yeah, you don't like. So if you represent an artist, if I'm a gallery and you're my artist, no, I don't want you selling your artwork on Instagram. That's what I do.
Right.
But there are
you're
artists,
cutting them out.
Exactly. But like, so I had a gallery that shown me, and she posted an artist that I don't know if she worked with her or not, but she was selling work out of her studio because she doesn't have a gallery. So I ended up buying a painting for $75. It was probably $2,000 retail, but she was selling out of her studio. It was on Instagram. So I think that artists or galleries, if they're working with an artist, no, they don't want you to sell it outside of the gallery model.
Are there contractual,
sometimes, but I mean, there's consignment agreements like between galleries. So it's like, okay, I'm going to take 12 pieces from Topper from this date to this date. 7 of them are for this show, 3 are for this fair, and 2 I'm just keeping as inventory. Here's the agreed upon price.
How can the gallery market it? Like, how the fuck can the gallery put the word out where everything has to be through whispers, cloak and dagger?
No, I mean, galleries, like, we have an Instagram, and if you put a painting, it used to be if you put a painting on Instagram, you'd get a lot of collectors calling about it. So that's one way. If, galleries have websites, and sometimes I see now a lot of galleries have like a shop page or something. So cheaper works, maybe under $1,000 that you can kind of,
do collectors generally wire or pay all in full? You notice you mentioned installment payments, like,
well, me, because I'm not rich. So most collectors will pay in full and wire the money. Some galleries accept credit cards. Some collectors want to pay with credit card because they get, a fee, points or whatever. Some collectors will make payments, but generally, like, I get to do it because I'm a dealer. I know a lot of dealers. I'm an art. People know me. Like,
insider.
Yeah, but I think, honestly, like, no gallery, maybe Gagosian or Hauser and Wirth, but I think if you, Topper, went to any gallery in New York City and said, hey, I really want this painting. It's $8,000. I need to make 3 payments. I think most galleries would be fine. They wouldn't release the work until it was paid. But yeah, I think,
dope.
And that is a way for you specifically, and all of your friends to get invited to the cool events, the cool party. So like,
hot bisexual chicks.
Oh my God.
I only got to spend $5,000. Sign me
up. But so if you buy from a gallery in LA or New York or whatever, or Houston, and they do a fair, generally then they send you a VIP preview for the fair, whether it's in Houston or Miami or New York, that gets you in. if you let them know and you say, send me a preview, they might say, oh, we're having this dinner. If you're going to be in Miami, let me know if you can make it, that kind of stuff. So it is, and it's, I don't, it not actually like, if it's done just organically and naturally, I think it's like, can be a really nice kind of symbiotic relationship. Like, galleries want the same collectors coming back every show, buying, bringing their friends. So we can invite you to dinner because we have to have more collectors to be able to afford to invite you to dinner.
Right.
Like a lot of times with dinners right now, because time's tough, it's like the artist can have 2 guests and we invite the gallery staff. And, if there's a big collector that's in town or something, but, years previous, you would say 30 people, we're closing down the restaurant kind of thing. And that'll happen again too, but it's just, I think, what I see, I was terrible at business when I had a gallery because I'm an artist, but I have the privilege of working with someone, Aaron, who's like amazing at business. My friend Lauren, who runs a gallery, is like amazing at business. So it's like fun to like hear them and watch them do that. But like, even like cutting down a dinner, like we're going to save costs this way, or we're not doing this fair, we're doing that one. Like, it's fun for me to watch it. I just don't want to have to participate in it because it's confusing to me. And I'd rather be like, let's make more shows.
Feel that too. So let's go back to the importance as a marketing tool of being hot as an artist. Can you kind of explore, why that's important or why that's not, and kind of why it might capture a gallerist or might capture a large audience on social media or capture a collector base?
Sure. I mean, I think this has nothing to do with the art world. This is just human nature. Mm-hmm. If you're considered more attractive, it just opens doors, period. Like, mm-hmm. So, and I don't even think, dealers or collectors.
Pretty privilege, as they call it on.
Sure. Yeah. Like, I don't think I'm sure that subconsciously we all gravitate towards people and objects and things that we think are more attractive and preference them in ways we don't know about. Mm-hmm. So, great. As an artist, like, you know what? Like, I'm going to take my shirt off this summer and pose next to one of my sculptures, and maybe that'll get me a show. Like, good for you. Do it. Right. Like, I think it's playing a game. It doesn't diminish the value of the work or the quality of the work if it's there, and it's
And I think it really just speaks to the whole point of like, this whole thing is human. This whole, like, every element of a work is, what we're talking about is just this.
And also, I don't like ugly artists or whatever. Like, they're also of value and meaningful too. And I just imagine maybe it's harder to open doors just as it is in the real world, right?
Do you think it will, like, in the age of social media, like, tilt the scales towards more attractive people, or like, or can an artist be anonymous like Banksy?
Well, that's I think Banksy could just be its own show on its own. Yeah, clearly an artist can be anonymous like Banksy, right? Look at what they're doing. I mean, although everybody knows who he is.
Is that a they, them? Or is that
I have no idea how they identify. Do you? I have neither seen nor their genitalia nor spoken to them.
Oh, baby.
I just know that they put things through an auction and destroy it. Now, that might be an act of genius. We've never seen that. I don't love that artwork, but that, moment at Christie's or Sotheby's when he shred the painting, like that, I was talking to a friend about this first conversation we had about genius, and she's like, there's no genius because nothing is original. I don't agree with that. I think we're not seeing genius.
Say them on the show.
Well, genius is not even... If it's out in the world, you're not seeing it because we're just looking at paintings all the time. And you're like, is this a good painting? Is this genius? We're not going to recognize it when we see it, and we're probably rejecting it at the moment.
Yeah,
I guarantee.
So it can only be established in time. So is that kind of what you're saying? Because ultimately, at some point, people are going to reflect upon this time, and whoever's creating at this time, they're not going to say, oh, 2024, 2025, the 2020s was the one decade where not one genius was painted.
Well, you can look at the MacArthur Genius Grant that just came out, right? They the MacArthur Award deigns however many geniuses every year, and this just happened. So it's usually people in the creative field.
Yeah, but that's just, a group of individuals who are also corrupt or have their own incentives and motivations to ordain someone.
Yeah, but that's all we're talking. It's not like Jesus Christ is coming down with his Harry Potter wand and saying, genius, genius. No. Human beings like you or me are saying that work is genius. And eventually, somebody who has more. Well, no, I think it does. It can't be a fluke, right? This idea of genius, it has to happen over time so that it's not just like a one-off where it's like, whoa, someone did this one thing and then they can't do anything else ever again. And I think, again, I think that we as sort of consumers, what I would look at is what I would consider a way to find something that's genius now in the art world, or start considering this, is what are we rejecting? What are we automatically dismissing? What are we not paying attention to? What are we saying? That's bullshit. That's garbage.
Holy shit. But
that's
what
where
we are doing that with, because it's like...
Because all we're doing is art consumers is we're looking on Instagram. Genius is not there, I promise you. And if we are going into galleries, we're not seeing it again. We're not seeing it. It's because we're not looking for it. So if you're going to galleries and museums, you're just looking at paintings, though.
Yeah, it's there. But people are innovating with paintings, but we can't see it. We can't see.
What are they doing what's innovating? What's genius level innovation in painting?
Someone is doing something that we're not recognizing that is astounding.
Well, that's because the art world is very conservative. We're not recognizing it because it's not being held up, because it probably is happening by someone living in Western Massachusetts at the end of a dirt road on 70 acres in their basement that no one is looking at.
100 zillion%.
It's like, you find Jesus Christ in the homeless man, right? Like, the artist is not going to be front and center on Instagram saying, look at my paintings, they're so good.
Why not, though? They're doing that as a means to get the word out for all these reasons that we've been talking about. You need to fucking butter your bread somehow.
Oh, but I'm not saying you don't do that, but the genius is not out there. There's no genius out there being like, look at me, I'm a genius. I'm a genius.
No, of course. Well, look, you're going to tell me if Basquiat was around today, he wouldn't be on fucking Instagram?
I don't know that he was a genius, honestly.
No, he was. He crushed the game. He
evolved it a little bit. He was a street artist that put it on canvas. I like the work. Is it genius? I would say he's held up to a specific standard because he was young, black, and beautiful. The art world
all those things are important.
The art world loves to tokenize like crazy. And he was also chosen. He was chosen by Warhol.
Right.
Warhol, I would argue, was a genius. Really invented the factory model, right? The factory itself, this idea of art production, no one had done that to the extent that he had. I mean, he literally created a factory where things were being manufactured. And,
lots of works out there.
In the future, everyone would be famous for 15 minutes, I think was a warning. And we see it now. So that kind of sort of, whatever that is, prescience, foresight.
Yeah.
No artist is being like, in the future. They're only thinking about in my future. This is what I'm saying. Like, artists
we're telling the audience right now of artists, like, this is what you need to be thinking about if you're going to be ordained as your objective as a fucking genius.
No, because it's been done. So geniuses won't repeat. You're not going to go, if anybody tries to go be Andy Warhol, look at Jeff Koons did it. He kind of evolved.
He's a fucking genius. Look at,
He didn't invent the model, though. He might be business savvy. I think he's made some real masterworks. Truly, truly, truly. But he is essentially Warhol's child in terms of the manufacturing process, right? He upped it. Maybe he had more money. I mean, during Warhol's life.
History doesn't repeat itself, but it rhymes. So, who's going to follow in that model? And, we should do a show where I hold up 100 working artists and I say yes or no to could this person be viewed as a genius in the future? You're not going to tell me all 100 are no.
Absolutely, I will.
We'd like to thank our ongoing sponsor, Prilosec. for standing by Artburn through every fiery debate and every late-night gallery opening. We know that art stirs the soul, and sometimes, let's face it, it stirs the stomach too. Whether it's that third slice of greasy pizza at the post-exhibit party, or those jalapeno poppers you snagged at the last gallery crawl, Prilosec has your back. Just one pill a day, and you're ready to take on all the art and all the gassy foods that come your way. So from the abstract to the avant-garde, you can focus on the art without worrying about the heartburn. And as always, Artburn is proudly brought to you by Prilosec, because when art burns and your stomach churns, they're here to keep you cool, calm, and ready for more.
Baby, you're great. I said this, that I think probably like real innovation and stuff, well, probably in some performance, stuff that we are not looking at in a meaningful way. I think probably digital and new media, there are people doing shit that we have no idea about, but that's like, technology is really hard. It's hard in the art world for people to understand technology, how technology dies. And I think it has to be more, there can be someone right now who's working with new paint and finding for a way that it's going to connect this and have some chemical reaction. But that's science, right? That might be one thing. So what's genius going to have to look like? Like, again, cubism. Who's coming up with, I don't know, what's the next cubism, right? Like,
someone's got to be working on it.
Maybe, and probably somebody is somewhere, but then also, like, people kind of have to fall in line, and that's where you want your sycophants, because then I think that supports, like, Jeff Koons to me, and anybody else who continues this tradition of the factory model, well, they're not inventing anything. Jeff Koons certainly expanded that idea.
No, but they're referencing it. So, like, a great work can constantly be referencing many other artists, and you know, you could be referencing, you know, Da Vinci.
But if I make a painting that looks like that's cubist, I mean, I can be referencing Picasso.
No, I know, but I'm saying, like, but just the methodology as a reference, as well as the you know, subject matter of the work. You know, it's kind of, you can blend them both.
Yes, but is that genius?
Well, if you're referencing many, I mean, I'm not a genius, but I'm trying to, like, say maybe this is how, you know, the future will be, you know, future genius will be identified or something like that.
I mean, I guess I don't know. I mean, again, that word is
and maybe
tricky.
That word is too powerful, but, you know, I guess what I'm trying to say is, you know, who will be revered in future generations as someone that they don't make them like they used to, because the past will always be canonized in a certain way.
Yeah, it's interesting. I was thinking about that top 100 albums that came out from Apple Music this year. I don't know if you saw this list. But it was sort of, I was actually surprised at it. It's a very contemporary list, and I forget what the number one record is, but it was like, you know, old number one list that I remember seeing was like, oh, Bob Dylan and the Beatles and the Stones. Yeah. And this was like very contemporary, to the point where I was like, oh my God, they forgot like a lot of records, right? But I realized it's an evolved list, right? Like, yeah, Bob Dylan, those first 10 records he put out were amazing, but in 2024...
Genius.
Yeah, genius. But in 2024, I don't know that we can include those still, when there's been so much more content in the past 60, 70 years. So art history, if it does any job of evolving, which I don't know.
Of course.
I don't know what will be... First of all, I don't know that art history is taught in school unless you go to art history for college. But what will be taught from like the 2000s in art history? I'm just trying to think of even recent art history. Like, I mean, and again, I'm not an art historian. I don't know what movements have happened. Like, you know, like figurative painting it's not a new movement. Like, you could talk about digital and new media work as something that's new, but I think any person would be hard pressed to even talk about 5 shows that they saw in that vein that were like, oh, those digital new media shows were like game changers. So to your point, I don't know who like current artists will the one person I can think of is Amy Sherrod, because she did the portrait of Michelle Obama, and it was going to be Kehinde Wiley because everybody loved. So these were the first two contemporary artists that everybody in the art world knew that did these presidential portraits. Well, Kehinde Wiley's been Me Too'd, right? Because he was allegedly groping boys.
Oh, wow.
Amy Sherrod is still there, right? That where she's picked up at Hauser and Wirth. That's her only gallery. I've got to meet her. Her studio's in Jersey City.
But can we separate? I mean, this is another show because we're at time. But can we separate the artist, the artist as a person and their actions from the work?
I mean, absolutely. I can personally, but no, of course not. We're a society of dum-dums. Now, I'm not saying like if you're raping someone, I don't think it should be separated. You should be in jail, right? Like that would be.
You should be in jail, but the work doesn't take away from the genius of the work or the
no, I don't think so. And in some ways, and it probably enhances. It probably has a lot to do with. But first of all, I don't think Kehinde Wiley Kehinde Wiley was painting his own canvases. It was a new idea. It was very interesting. It was fascinating, right? To see black men a la the Sistine Chapel and Nikes. And
those are unbelievable.
Yeah, it was a great, great thing. But then his success, you can tell when he started the work was being made in China. And you can tell the scale is terrible. This was becoming product like crazy. But yeah, Kehinde Wiley, again, I'm not going to say genius anymore, but that evolved an idea that I think in the time I remember seeing that Sistine Chapel work, and that was groundbreaking to me, right? To elevate like young black men in street clothes to this level of iconography. That to me at the time was incredible. Like I thought that was a whole new idea and a way of looking. And that's kind of what I'm interested in. Like, even if you don't agree with it or don't like it or whatever, it is a whole new way to see. It was a mirror in society. It was maybe what he wanted or what he was hoping to see or what he was reflecting. I actually got to go on every December in Miami, he and his sister would host this fish fry also. And so he grew up in LA. We had a mutual friend and I got to go to this fish fry twice. And it was awesome. And it was this.
How many art insiders were there?
It was who knows? I was wasted, I'm sure. I was like blowing lines off whatever fish was being cut before it was being cooked. But it was, it was super insidery and I only got to go but it was like, the art world has just changed so much, and maybe I've like gotten older, but it's become, I have gotten older. P.S. I'm old.
Join the club.
Yeah. But I think because it's become, it's just become more business. And when I was like 32 when I started, I'm 48 now, right? So like, I was in a much different, I didn't give a shit about anything other than having a good time. And then I was like, when I opened my first gallery, the first show, I remember I was like, we're going to sell out, man. We're going to get New York Times reviews. Like, look at this, I was so naive. And I think kind of thinking about the first show I was ever in as an artist, I applied for this open call and it was in Poughkeepsie, New York. I was like, yes, I did it. And I went to the opening. I was so embarrassed. I had to like turn around. They asked artists to wear like name tags, and my painting, which was like a text painting about like 9/11, was next to like landscape paintings and like a painting of a cat. And I was, I had.
Is that still around? I'll buy that from you.
It's right. And I'll show it to you. Hold on. I'll get it.
Yo!
This is the first artwork I ever made that was shown.
Yo.
So it's this quote from this Patti Smith song that says, "At heart, I'm a Muslim. At heart, I'm an American artist, and I seek peace, and I have no guilt." And then it repeats, "Just think, though, I'm going to be fucking famous," which is a line from this shooter who was shooting a mall at the time. So it's this combination of these two sentences. Wow. It was the first artwork I ever made and that was ever in a show.
Very
but
cool.
Obviously it didn't sell.